is hiding among youths are forced a sword raised openly can be defeated. Our traitors hiding behind loyalty destroy nations within the council fell in silence again. No one dared to challenge him after the meeting ended. Oran stepped outside into the freezing night. Snow continued falling across the camp while horses moved restlessly beside other shelter. He looked award the distant mountain where darkness swallows the heroines. Somewhere beyond those peaks, powerful enemies were preparing for war. A rider suddenly entered the camp at full speed. The horses was executed and covered in snow. Guard immediately surrounded the messengers. While Orhan walked forward, the rider fell from the horses before speaking. A village near the western border has been destroyed, he said weakly. The attackers came before dawn, the burden, everything. The camp exploded into joy. Women prayed in fear while warriors reached for their weapons instantly. Orhan helped the wounded messengers stand before demanding details. According to survivor, the attacker wore mixed armor. Some spoke Greek while others spoke Turkish. That detail disturbed that Orhan more than attack itself. It means betrayal. Without wasting another moment, Orhan ordered preparation for desperate. Boran ups and corn up, gathering selected warrior while supplies were loaded quickly. Within the hour, Orhan and his army disappeared into the snowy wilderness, heading toward the destroyed village. The journey latest through the ride, the deeper travel into the mountain, the harsher the weather became. Frozen wine struck the rider constantly while walls hold somewhere within the forest. Yet none of the warriors complained. Every man understood that the frontier itself was changing. And dawn approached, smoke appeared in the distance. The village had can be peaceful settlement surrounded by farm and orchard. Now it looked like a graveyard buried beneath snow and ash. Burned houses collapsed across the valley while survived searched through ruins for missing family members. The carriage of grieving mother enough through the frozen air. Orhan dismounted slowly for several moments. He said nothing. He walking among the ruins silently, studies every detail. A child sat beside the remain of a burdened house, holding a burden wooden toy nearby. An already man searched through ashes with trembling hand, hoping to find traces of his family. The devastation was beyond military attack. It was meant to spread fear. One survivor approached Orhan carefully. The old man's face was blackened by smoke, while grief filled in his eyes. The came before sunrise. He whispered somewhere the symbol of Byzantium, but other carried the Turkish blade. Orhan started at him. Did you organize anyone? The old man hesitated. I heard one of them speak the name of our noble family from the frontier. The revelation struck Orhan deeply. Someone powerful inside the Turkish land was helping the enemy. That night, Orhan sat alone near the remains of the village. Snow continued falling around him while flames from ruined homes slowly disappearing into darkness. He thought about his father struggle to build unity among scattered tribes. Osman Bey has spent in his life fighting enemies openly, but Orhan now forced something for some more dangerous, hiding betrayal The next morning, scouts returned with information about suspicious movement near an abandoned caravan routine hidden within the mountain. Orhan immediately gathered his warrior. He moves now, he ordered. The apes followed his through narrow forest path where snow reached the knees of their horses. Hours later, the discovered track leading toward ancient ruins near a canyon. Smoke rose faintly from behind broken stone wall. Orhan signaled silence. The warriors surrounding the era carefully before advancing. Inside the ruins, several men applauded. Weapons from hidden wagon, gold coin, and Byzantine armor were stacked beside crates filled with the arrow and sword. The evidence from Orhan fear someone was secretly supplying enemy faces through Turkish territory before the Arabs could capture them. Arrows sudden rain from the cliffs above ambushed Boran Ab shouted. The forest exploded into violence. Masked warriors charged from hidden positions while arrows struck the frozen ground around the Turks. Orhan drew his sword instantly and blocked an incoming strike before contracting with deadly precision. Steel clashed violently. The wild horses screamed in panic. The enemy fighters were disciplined. This was no ordinary bandit attack. Orhan fought through the choice, searching for their commander near the cliffs. He stopped a masked rider directing the ambush calmly. Their eyes met for a brief moment before the rider escaped deeper into the forest. Orhan pursued him immediately. Branches snapped beneath the horses while snow flew through the air during the chase. The masked rider moved with incredible skill through dangerous terrain. Finally, near the edge of the frozen river, the enemy disappeared among hidden mountain paths. Orhan stopped his horse. He realized something terrifying. The attacker knew the exact route before they arrived. Someone inside the tribe was leaking information. When Orhan returned a couple days later, disturbance has already begun spread among the nobles. Every family accused another of hidden disloyalty. Merchants feared trade would collapse completely. It was expand frontier from some tribal leaders secretly questioned whether Orhan possessed enough experience to survive the coming centuries, but Orhan refused to show weakness. Instead, he organized a great council inviting neighboring tribes from across the frontier. Large banners filled the valley walls, while armed guards secured every entrance to the gathering. Warriors from distant lands arrived carrying different symbols and loyalties, yet all understood the seriousness of the moment. Inside the great tent, argument began immediately. Some leaders demanded immediate war against Byzantine, others inside the frontier needed unity first. Several nobles openly accused rival tribes of cooperating with enemies. The atmosphere nearby collapsed into violence before Orhan finally stood. His violence silenced the entire council. If was continue fighting among ourselves, he declared, our enemies will not send armies to destroy us. They watch they will watch us destroy each other. The leaders listened carefully. Orhan continued, the frontier land between survival and extensions. Our enemies knows they cannot defeat united tribes easily. That is why the spread fear. This is war. They buy traitors with gold. They want division. He paused before looking directly toward the gathering nobles. And if betrayal exit among us, I will expose it myself. The council ended differently than expected. Many tribal leaders left with renewed respect for Orhan leadership, yet hidden enemies remained silent behind false loyalty far away inside a Byzantine fortress. Powerful commanders gather around a large map of the frontier. Candles illuminated the stone chamber while soldiers guarded the door heavily. At the center of the room stood Nicholas. Unlike other commanders driven only by violence, Nicholas preferred strategy and manipulation. He studies Orhan carefully through spices and informant. He admires the young leader courage but believe emotional and eventually destroy him. The Turks are strongest when united, Nicholas told his commanders. So we will divide them before we destroy them. One soldier asked about the failed ambush. Nicholas smiled coldly. It was not failure. He learned how quickly Orhan react. Now we continue the pressure. He pointed towards survival villages on the map. Burn more settlement, disrupt their trade routes, spread rumors among the tribes, make them question each other. And Orhan and other commanders asked. Nicholas started at the frontier map silently. Eventually, he whispered he will stand alone. Back inside the Kyle and winter depends. Food supplies become increasingly important while village strength defenses among future attack. Orhan spent long night planning military strategy beside burnt commanders, yet desperate, accusing. He continued visiting ordinary people personality. He listened to grieving families. He spoke with wounded soldiers. He he the open began seeing him not only a warrior but as a leader carrying their struggle alongside them. One evening, Orhan's mother entered his tent quietly while studying battle map. "You have not slept for days," she said softly. "There is too much to do," Orhan replied. She looked at him carefully. "Your father carried a similar burden, but remember this, a ruler who forget compassion becomes no different than the enemies he fought." Her word remained in Orhan's mind long after she left. Days later, another messengers arrived carrying urgent news. A caravan transporting winter supplies has disappearing near the northern forest route. Survival claimed heavily armed rider attacked without warning before vanished into the mountain. Oran immediately understood the danger. If his supply attack continued, enter village would strive before spring. This time, however, he prepared differently. Instead of leading a large force openly, he selected only a few trusted of them, disguised themselves as merchants traveling through the same route. The mission was dangerous. If enemy spies recognized Orhan, escape would become impossible. For 2 days, the revealed slowly through snow-covered valleys, pretending to protect trade. Began on the other night, while campfire burned near the road. Shadow moved between the trees. The ambush began silently. Arrows struck the beacon while Mayer's riders charged from the darkness, but instead the Panicking, Orhan and his anchor uncracked immediately. The attackers realized too late. They had entered a trap. A bonfire and dropped beneath the forest trees. Horses collided while steel flashed through and darkness. Orhan fight forced behind Boran apes driving enemy warriors back step by step. During the battle, one wounded attacker attempt escape. Orhan captured him personally. The prisoners refused to speak at first, but after interrogations, he revealed critical information. The attacks were being focused by powerful noble connect to both Byzantine commanders and corrupt traitors within the frontier. The conspiracy was larger than anyone imagined. Orhan understood that the coming war would decide for more than borders. It would determine whether justice or betrayal controlled the future of the state. At the snowstorm intensified around the camp that night, Orhan stood beside the fire, starting into the flames silently. The frontier was entering in its darkest chapters, and somewhere beyond the mountain, enemies were already preparing the next strike. Fight across the border. The frontier did not sleep after the caravan ambush. Fear traveled through the valley faster than rivals, and by the end of the week, nearly every village near the western border then heard stories about masked border wars tracking supply routes round the cover of shocking travel without arms. Accord farmer abandoned insulated land near the forest. Even experienced silent soldiers began watching status with suspicious inside the K camp. Tension spread quietly like smoke beneath a feet tent. Orhan Bey understood the danger better than anyone. The attacks themselves were painful, but the true goal behind them was no more destructive. The enemy wasted destruct. They wanted to accuse one another until unity collapsed from within. That was exactly why Orhan refused to react emotionally. While some commanders demanded immediate execution and mass arrest, Orhan continued investigations carefully. He spent hours questioning prisoners captured during the caravan ambush. Most remained silent even under pressure, but eventually one unwounded mercury revealed a single name connected to the conspiracy, a wealthy trader for the frontier. The information disturbed Orhan deeply because the man had supported Turkish tribe publicly for years. His caravan supplied villages during winter, and many nobles trusted him completely. If the accusations proved true, it would mean enemy influence had already reached the heart of the frontier economy. Orhan gathered Boran ops and corner ops privately inside his tent that night. Rain struck the caverna's roof while firelight moved across the map spread over the table. We cannot accuse him openly without proof. Orhan and quietly, if we are wrong and we created division ourselves. Boran up crossed his arms, and if we wait too long, then more blood with follows, Orhan replied. Silence filled the tent. Finally, Orhan made his discussions. We watched him the next morning. Trusted ops discussed themselves as merchants and laborers across the marketplace. They followed the traders' movement carefully while preparing to conduct ordinary business for arrivals day. Nothing unusual happened. The trader continued speaking politely with tribal elders, donating food to poor families and hosting representing guests inside the mansions. Everything appeared normal to normal. Then one side night shortly before dawn, hidden messengers entered the traders politely through a rear gate. The man carried no torch and wore dark traveling clothes stained with mud from mountain road. The spies followed him separately. Hours later, the messengers left carried a shoulder-skilled letter hidden beneath his cloak before he could escape the city. Boran, arms and survival warriors surrounded him near the river crossing. The man resisted violently. He nearly escaped before Boran finally struck him from his horse. Inside the sealed letter was a detailed report about Turkish troops, movement, supply, location, and defensive weakness near the western frontier. The betrayal was real. Then Orhan leader the truth anger burned inside him like fire, yet the control his emotionally carefully publicly exposing the traitor without understanding the entire network would only harm the remaining traitors. Instead, Orhan created a dangerous plan. He ordered false military families information spread quietly through controlled challenge. According to the fake reports, Turkish forces planned to move large supplies caravans through the northern mountain routes within 3 days. In the information reached enemy commanders, the trap would expose everyone connected to the conspiracy. For the next 2 days, the frontier remained these tense with anticipation. Then the attack came. Near midnight, heavily armed riders ambushed the empty northern route exactly where the false report claimed the caravan would travel. Hidden Turkish warriors immediately surrounded them from the cliff above. The battle erupted instantly. Arrows rained through the darkness while horses screamed beneath the jaws. Orhan himself led the attack from the center, cutting through enemy fighters with relentless force. Several attackers attempted escape, but Turkish arms blocked every route. When the surviving prisoners were interrogated, they confirmed the entire conspiracy. The wealthy traders has been secretly working with Byzantine commander for mother helping funds raids against Turkish settlement in exchange for promises of power and protection. When the frontier collapsed by sunrise, Orhan orders are arrested publicly. The marketplace fell silent and soldiers created then men through the stressed people started his divisible. Some refuses to believe the accusations until the capture letter and gold payment were displayed before the tribal council. The traitors targeted for an mercenary. I had to be survive. He carried the Byzantine will destroy this frontier eventually. I choose the winning side. Orhan looked at the closely. A man who sells him people for gold for said he already destroyed himself. The council silent the traitors of Pepet exact beyond the frontier. He properties were seized and distributed among families harmed by the attacks. For a brief moment, stability returned, but for beyond the borders, Nicklon received news above the field conspiracy with growing friction. The Byzantine commander stood inside the fortress studying report while storm could gather outside the stone windows. One of his generals waited nervously nearby. Orhan was faster than expected. The general administering Nicklons remained calm. Good, he replied softly. Strong enemies reveal their weakness. Eventually, the general hesitated before speaking again. What are you order now? Nicklon slowly ruled up the map before answering. If we cannot divide the Turk through greed, then we divided them through fear. Within days, a new wave of attack began across the frontier. This time, the enemy avoided direct battles. Instead, villages disappeared during the night. Wells were disposed. Food supplies burned. Entire families vanished without trace. Panic spread rapidly. Refugees flooded toward larger settlements seeking protection, while rumors multiplied. And every passing day, some claimed dark armies were marching from the west. Others believed traitors inside the tribe guided every attack. Orhan traveled constantly between villages, tried to restore order. He recognized patterns, reinforced defensive towers and stations very near valuable settlements. Yet, despite his effort, the enemy continued striking. Unpredictability, the frontier was slowly bleeding. One evening, Orhan arrived at a rival's village. Shortly after another attack, smoke will rose from burnt homes while surviving gathered around the dead wrapped his blanket. A little girl stood alone near the river bank, staring silently at the destructions. Orhan approached her carefully. Where is your family? He asked gently. The girl pointed toward the covered bodies without speaking. For several moments, Orhan could not move. He had witnessed countless battles throughout his life, but scenes like this affected his differently. Warriors accepted death as part of their path. Innocent children did not. That night, while soldiers cured the village, Orhan sat beside the river, unable to rest. The freezing water moved beneath broken ice while distant walls howled through the forest. Orhan approached quietly. You blame yourself, he said. Orhan remained silent. You cannot protect everyone, Orhan continued. Orhan finally looked toward him. If we people lose faith in us, then the frontier dies long before the armies arrive. The world stuck between them while snow began falling once again. The following morning, scouts returned carrying urgent news. Enemy forces and occupied an abandoned forest overlooking major trade roads near the western border. From there, they control movement between multiple villages and language read fairly. Orhan understood immediately. The fortress had become the center of enemy operations. If we remained under Byzantine control, the attack would never stop. Despite accusations among his warriors, Orhan prepared for another campaign immediately. He selected his most trusted ops and gathering intelligence about the fortress defense carefully. The situation looked dangerous. High walls surrounded the structures, while enemy archers guarded every two towers. War still several Mercury until known for brutality had joined the glaciers recently. A direct assault would cost hundreds of lives, but waiting would allow the enemy to stagnate future for 2 days. Orhan studies the fortress from hidden mountain positions. He watched guard rotations, supplies, deliveries, and patrol movement patiently. Then he noticed something important. Every third night, enemy supply wagons entered through a lower eastern gate connected to underground storage tunnels beneath the fortress. The weakness changed everything. Oran created a risky infiltration plan on the choice night. Several disguised themselves as supply workers transporting barrels through the eastern roads. Hidden weapons remained concealed beneath food sacks, while other Turkish warriors waited silently inside nearby forests. Rain covered the mountain as the wagon approaches the forest gate. Enemy guard inspected the supplies before allowing entry. Inside the tunnel inside, tension became unbearable. One wrong movement would expose the entire mission. As the weekend rolled deeper underground, Oran gave the signal. The disguised ops killed the guard silently before securing the tunnel entrance. At the same moment, Turkish warriors outside launched diversion attacks against the main gate. Choice exploded extra the forest instantly. Arms bells echo through the night while soldiers rushes toward the walls believing the primary assaults had begun there. Meanwhile, Oran and his warriors storm upward through the underground passages directly into the center of the fortress. Fighting enter across narrow corridors lit by torches. Steel crashed violently against stone wall while smoke filled the air from burning oil. Enemy migrant resistance fairly, but surprise gave the Turks a crucial advantage. Oran fought through the fortress like a storm. Every step forward pushed enemy defenders deeper into panic. Near the central control, he finally encountered the fortress commander, a massive Mercury captain wearing black armor stained with blood from previous companions. The man languaged loudly before drawing his enemy's sword. So the son of Osman finally arrives. Orhan answered only with steel. Their duels shook the country while battle continued around them. Sparks flew through the rain as both warriors exchanged devastating strikes. The Mercury captain fought with withdrawal strength, but Orhan moved faster. Finally, after a long struggle, Orhan drove his blade through the commander's armor. The enemy collapsed onto the wet stone. Seeing their leader fall, the remaining defeated attempts to retreat. Some surrendered while others fled into the mountain. By dawn, the fortress belonged to the Turks. The victory spread hopes across the frontier immediately. Villagers celebrated where caravans continuously returned to the road and once more. But Orhan did not celebrate. As he walked. He captured forest. He discovered prison cells hidden beneath the Lord's Hall. Inside were civilians kidnapping during previous raid weeks, starving and terrified. Some had been missing for months. When the prisoner resides, Turkish warrior had freed them. Many broke down crying, among them when an elderly scholar from a distant village who had overheard conversations between enemy commanders during captivity. The old man revealed disturbing information. Nicholas was preparing something much later than border raid. According to the scholar, Byzantine later planned to unite multiple armies from a massive campaign against the frontier in spring. Mercenaries from distant land were already arriving, gold flowing through secret alliances and curtained nobles within neighboring tribes and quietly promised support if Iran fell. The coming war could not resemble previous battle if would decide the frontier of the entire Persian. That night, Orhan stood up on the captured fortress wall, staring toward the west where dark clouds gathering beyond the mountain. The fire below illuminated executed warriors celebrating survivors after weeks of fear and bloodshed. Yet inside Orhan had unease remained because he understood something clear now. Everything that had happened so far, the raid, betrayal, ambitions, and conspiracies, had only been the beginning. The real war was still coming. The rise of the crescents, the frontier changed after the capture of the fortress. For the first time in many months, caravan travels across the western road without disappearing into smoke and blood. Village response their market farmer returned contentedly to a golden field. Children once hidden behind wooden walls during every sunset slowly began playing outside again, but space on the frontier was never permanent. Everyone understood that the victory against the fortress has embarrassed powerful enemies beyond the border. Byzantine's commanders would not remain silent after losing such an important stronghold somewhere in the west. Farmers were already preparing for revenge. Inside the captured fortress, Turkish banner now moved with the cold winds above the stone. Tunnels guard patrol the walls while blacksmiths repair damaged gates destroyed during the battle. Orhan Bey transformed the forest into a military center protecting nearby settlements and trade routes. He wanted the people to understand something important. The Turks had not come only to conquer, they had come to build order, yet leadership brought burden heavier than war itself. Every morning, delegations from nearby villages arrived seeking protections, justice, or assistance. Some complained about stolen livestock, others requested soldiers for defense against bandits hiding within mountain forests. Merchant arguments over trade taxes while tribal elders debated land boundaries. Orhan listened to them all patiently. He spent long hours resolving disputes instead of resting. Many warriors admired his discipline, but Boran Apps noticed accusation growing inside him. One evening after the final council ended, Boran approached Orhan near the fortress wall. "You carry the problem of every man yourself," he had quietly. "If we do not," Orhan answered, "you will." Boran leaned against the stone wall while looking toward the valley below where torches illuminated the road. A road must be strong, he replied, but even strong men broke when they are forget they are human. Orhan remained silent for survival moment. Then distant horsemen appeared near the eastern road. The guard immediately raised alarms within wind. Alarm soldiers filled the void. Was archers prepared positions overlooking the gate. The approaching riders carried no visible banner, making their identity impossible to determine in darkness. When they finally reached the gate, everyone recognized that symbols on their armors. Mongol beyond the atmosphere inside the frontier changed instantly. Even experienced warrior felt unused whenever Mongol rider appeared near the frontier. Their empire had crushed countless kingdoms through fear and brutally. Entire cities despair beneath their invasions. The gates opened cautiously. Three Mongol avions entered slowly without showing fear despite being surrounded by Turkish warriors. Their leader stepped forward carrying a sealed message. This is for Orhan Bey, he said coldly. Orhan accepted the letter silently. Inside was a warning from a Mongol commander stationed far beyond the entered land. According to the messages, growing Turkish expanding has attracted attention among powerful rulers. The Mongol demanded tribute payment and military comparisons in future campaigning. Other side consequence would follow. Several commanders immediately urged Orhan to reject the demands publicly. Others that proving the Mongol directly could destroy the frontier before the Byzantine wars even began. Once again, Orhan forced impossible choices that night. He gathering his closest advisors privately inside the fortress hall. Rain spread the stone windows while tension filled the chamber. Corner up slammed his fist against the table. We cannot how to thread, he declared, and we cannot fight every enemy at once. Another elder argued. The debate continued for an hour. Finally, Orhan raised his hand for silence. He will answer carefully, he said. The frontier already stand near war. We again nothing from reckless right. Some commanders dislike his response, but none challenge him openly. After the meeting ended, Orhan walked along through the fortress corridors, deep in thought. Every direction carried danger. Now Byzantine gathered armies in the west. Mongol tested strength from the east. Hidden traitors still excited somewhere within the frontier itself, and spring was approaching, the season of war. Survival. Days later, scouts returned with disturbing news. Nicholas had survived. The Byzantine commander had escaped before the fortress fell completely, and now betrayal between enemy to Detroiters gathering supporting for a massive alliance against the Turks. Mercury group of nobles and foreign commanders were going in instantly. More armament still. Spies reported large shipment of weapons arriving at enemy ports along the western coast. Nicholas was preparing something in Rome. Orhan understood the meaning immediately. The frontier had only won a battle. The war itself had barely begun. To strengthen defense, Oran traveled personally between allied tribes, seeing military corruption. Some leaders welcomed him warmly, recognized the growing danger threatening all Turkish land. Others remained hesitant, fear controlled many hearts. One tribal chief spoke honestly during a gather near the southern valley. You asked us to stand against Byzantine, Mongol, and Mercarians. At the same time, the chief said, if we lose, our people vanish forever. Orhan looked directly toward him, and if we refuse to stand together, he answered calmly. We appeared one by one. The words separate through the gathering quietly. Many leaders realized he spoke truth over the following weeks. Alliances, slow steadiness, more warriors joined Orhan calls while supply network expand across the frontier. Black myth work day and night, producing sword, armor, and arrows. Watch honors where reinforced villages prepare emergency shelter in case of invasions. Everyone across the frontier people preparing for the storm approaching them. But inside enemy lands, Nucleus prepared even more carefully within a heavily guarded Byzantine fortress overlooking the sea. Commanders from different kingdoms gather around massive war mobs. Miraculously, Captain warning foreign armor stood beside noble lords while servant hordes wine beneath old golden Challenger declines abandons them confidently. Datush believe victory at once. Fortress has made them strong. He sighed when will show them the price of arguments. One commander asked about them. Orhan directly. Nicholas smiled silently. He is brave, intelligent. He is brave, intelligent, dangerous. His experience darkened, which is exactly why the must died before his influence spread. Future the alliances agreed upon a terrifying strategy. Instead of attacking on settlement at a time, they should launch simultaneous assaults across multiple fronts, overwhelming Turkish defense through choice and number. The goal was not merely conquest, it was annihilation. Weeks later, as spring finally melted the last winter snow, the attack began. Villagers near the western hills erupted into flame during the night, while enemy cavalry destroyed farms and supply depots. At the same time, military forces attacked southern trade route, cutting communication between allies. Tribes the frontier diseases into choice again. Messengers rode endlessly, carrying the reports of destruction from every direction. Instead, the forest commander argued desperately over where to spend reform command first. We cannot defend every village, one elder shouted. We must author, another answered energetically. Oran listened silently while studying the map. The enemy strategy was working exactly as intended. If Turkish forces divided completely, each group would eventually be insulated and destroyed. Then Orhan made a difficult decision. Instead of scattering warriors everywhere, he countered forces around the strategic region, protected the heart of the frontier. Some villagers near dangerous borderline would need evictions. The decisions broke his heart but sacrificed everything trying to defend every location would destroy everyone. Buran ups immediately led eviction missions toward valuable settlement families packed belongings desperately while soldiers and court refugees through forest and mountain path towards safe territory. Many cried while leaving their homes behind. Farhan watches them silently from horseback, and endless lines of civilians move across the valley road. This way, the true cost of war, not glory, not victory song, but ordinary people abandoning their life simply to survive another season. One night, while returning from an inspection near the northern defense Quran convoy entered a narrow canyon surrounded by steep cliffs. The silence felt wrong immediately to quiet. Then arrow rained from above. Enemy militants hidden among the rock attacked from both sides. Simultaneously, horses collapsed while soldiers scrambled for cover. It is a trap. Corner Arabs shooted the canyon interrupt into violence. Militants changed downward, wheeling exits and curved blade while archers continued firing from elevated positions. Orhan fought furiously beside his warrior, but the enemy had prepared the ambush carefully. During the choice, one masked Asians broke through the fighting directly toward Orhan. The Asians moved with terrifying speed. Their swords collided violently. Orhan immediately realized this was no ordinary soldiers. The masked warrior fought with light, precious, targeting opening with deadly intent. The duel continued across the rocky canyon while battle raged around them. Sparks flew toward the air with every strike. Finally, Orhan managed to wound the Asian shoulders. Instead of continuing the fight, the Ask warrior suddenly escaped upward through hidden mountain path before disappearing into darkness. The attack ended shortly afterward as Turkish commands arrived, so the enemy retreated. The message was clear. Nicolaus no longer wanted only military victory, they wanted Orhan dead personally. After the ambush, Quran approached, carrying a broken danger recovered from a fallen Mercury. This symbol, Boran said, carefully belonged to elite ascensions held only by powerful rulers. Oran examined the weapon silently. There was elasting faster than expected. Day later, and other crises emerged. A deadly illness began spreading among refugee camps near the South Valley's acute families living in corroded shelter quickly fell sick, overwhelming hearing and supply system. Once again, Oran faced a battle without sword. He immediately organized medical tent, food and prescriptions, and water purification across affected areas. He personally visited the camp despite warning about infection. The people saw their leader walking among the sick instead of hiding behind forest wall. Their loyalty depended future. One early woman inside the refuge camp grabbed Orhan's hand weakly while her treaties wounded children nearby. Your father protected this land, she whispered. Now you protect its soul. The world stayed with Orhan long after he left. Meanwhile, enemy armies continued gathering beyond the western mountain. Scouts reported thousands of soldiers assembling beneath Byzantine banners. Military cavalry from distant religious joined them daily. Massive sign weapons were transported toward Frontier Road. The final campaigning was approaching. One evening, captured by brought urgent information. Nicholas planned to attack a strategy important city controlling trade and communication across the frontier. It a city where Turkish alliances would collapse. Orhan immediately prepared for war. Messengers rode through the night, summoning allied tribe while soldiers gathering supplies from the largest military campaign since Osman Bey era across the frontiers, back with fires illuminated villages until dawn. Warriors shaped sword beside campfires, while prayers echoed through tents before the separate. Everyone understood that was coming. The next battle would shape the future of the frontier forever. Before the army marched on at rest, the warrior gathered beneath hundreds of banners moving in the spring wind. Some soldiers were experienced veterans, others were young men preparing for their first true war. Orhan looked across their faces carefully before speaking. Our enemies believe fear divide us, he declared. They believe gold can busy loyalty. They believe armies can destroy our future. His voice grew stronger, but this frontier was not built by fear, it was built by sacrifice. The warriors listened in complete silence. We do not fight only for land. Orhan continued, we fight our children will not live beneath chain. We fight so justice survive after we are wrong. They are raised. We do not fight only for land. Orhan continued, we fight to our children will not be breathed. Survive after we are gone. The race swore toward the rising sun after identity demand blood from us, then let history witness how the Turks answers. The valley exploded with battle cries. Thousands of warriors shouted his name, while drums hundreds across the mountain. The great army of the frontier began marching westward and some ever beyond the distant hills. Niklon waited for the war that would either destroy Oran forever or turn him into a legend. The rise of the crescents continued. The army moved across the western frontier like a warrior and fired thousands of horses, hundreds crossed muddy roads softened by the arrival of spring rains, while banners carrying the symbol of allied tribe waved against the darkness. Sky villagers stood beside the road silently watching the warriors pass. Some raised prayer, others cried quietly while fathers embarrassed son preparing for war. Orhan Bey rode at the front beside Boran ups and gone up, his expressions calm despite the growing storm surrounding the frontier. Scouts traveled constantly ahead of the army, reporting enemy movement from distant valley and mountain. Crossing every hour brought new warning. Nicholas was gathering strength faster than expected. Several Byzantine commanders had united beneath his banner, but they are not alone. Military companions from foreign land marches beside them, including heavily armored soldiers, no from destroying entire settlement without mercury. Rumors claim even rough Turkish tribes seeking gold had joined the alliance secretly. The coming war would not resemble ordinary border conflict. It would decide who controls the future of the frontier itself. As evening approaches, the Turkish army established camp near a forest river surrounded by steep hills. Far up approaches across the valley while holding on hold supplies and prepared defenses around the perimeter. Guard doubled patrols immediately because enemy scout has already been spotted nearby. Instead, the command tent Orhan studies map spread across a wooden table illuminated by lantern light. Mud stained the edge of the parchment, while small stone marked enemy positions reported by scout. The coalition's army is larger than expected. Nor admitted quietly how large. Orhan asked as latest 3 times our current force. Silence filled the tent. Burhan Absalom forward, then we attack before they unite completely. And other commander disagreed immediately. If we rush now, we walk directly into their numbers. Argument spread quickly across the gathering. Some favor aggressive attack while others demanding defensive calculations. Every man understood the danger. A single mistake could destroy everything Osman Bey had built. Orhan listened without interrupting, then the pointing toward a narrow valley crossing mark near the northern hills. The road, he said calmly, if the key. The commander studies the map carefully. It controls the enemy supplies routine from the western spot. If we cut their army, we can there before the main battle begins. Connor Ops nodded slowly, but the cruising is heavily defended, which is exactly when they will do not expect us to strike there first. The decision was made before town selected. Turkish unit would move through mountain pass toward the northern crossing while the main army remained hidden near the forest camp. If successful, the operation would cripple enemy logistics before the larger compaction even began. That night, rain covered the valley. Most soldiers rested beside campfire while armor dried beneath temporary shelter. But Orhan remained awake, walking silently between the tent. He spoke the wounded veterans, young warriors, the executed shout, returning from dangerous patrols. One young soldier stopped him nervously. Maybe the warrior said quietly, do you believe we can truly defeat such a large army? Orhan looked toward the dark hill beyond the camp. Victory does not belong to the largest army, he replied. It belongs to those who refuses to surrender their futures. The young warrior lowered his head respectfully. Far away beyond his hills, enemy fire illuminated another valley beneath Byzantine banner. Nicolos stood outside his massive command tent, watching mercenary units arrive through the rain. His alliance had become stronger than even expected. Gold attracting loyalty easily during time of war. One commander approached, carrying reports from spies that Turks remain near the eastern forest. He said, Nicolos studies the map carefully. Orhan will not wait behind wall. He replied, he will strike or supply roads. The commander looked surprised. Then we refuse them. Nicholas smiled slightly. Now we allow him to attack. The commander understood immediately it was another trap. Before sunrise, Turkish units led by Burhan Ak moved through narrow crossing exactly as planned. Thick fog covered the hills while rain turned the path dangerously slippery, yet the warrior advanced without hesitation. By midday, they reached the cliffs overlooking the supply road below. The enemy began move slowly through the valley, protected by armors, guard, and mounted cavalry. The canal stretched across nearly half by road. Boran raised his head silently. Archers spread prepared positions among the road. Then the attack began. Arrows rained downfall without warning while Turkish warriors came from hidden positions along both cliffs. Horses collapsed instantly beneath the ambush while burning began blocked escape roads. Enemy soldiers fought fiercely, but the narrow valley trapped them completely. Within minutes, chaos consumes the crossing. Smoke rose into the sky while still enough through the mountain. At the first, victory seemed certain. Then honors sounded from the western right. Addition enemy cavalry suddenly appeared from hidden positions beyond the hidden surrounding. Boran force from behind. The trap has closed back full. Boran shouted, but retreat roads were already collapsing beneath enemy pressure. The battle transformed into desperate survival. Warriors fought hand to hand, pros burning weapons while across darkness the fog covered valley. Boran himself was thrown his horses during the fighting but continued battle on foot beside his arms. Back to the main camp, scout arrived carrying urgent news about the ambush. Oran reacted instantly without waiting for full preparation. He mounted his horses and led reinforcements toward the northern crossing at full speed. The ride through the mountain became a race against death. By the time Oran reached the valley, Boran forces were nearly surrounded completely. Enemy cavalry pushes toward from both directions while military archers controlled the cliff above. Orhan did not hesitate. He raised his sword and charged directly into the battle. The arrival of Turkish reinforcements sheltered enemy momentum temporarily. Orhan fought through the center of the valley like a storm, cutting through embroiled soldiers while shouting commands among the choice. Boran saw him about the smoke and brought the frontier. Boran ordered the surviving warrior raising immediately. The battle intensified across the valley. Flood mud mixed with blood beneath the horses while sheltered wagon burned against the rain. Enemy Mercurians attempt the regroup around their command, but Orhan Assan's drove them backward step by step. Then Nicholas himself appeared on the western ridge overlooking the battlefield. Even from a distance, Orhan recognized him instantly. Their eyes may be immediately are fused. Our Orhan to listen to them are patiently. We spent long hours resolving dispute instead of resisting. Many warriors admired his discipline, but Boran Ops noticed the executions growing inside him. One evening after the final council ended, Boran approached Orhan near the forest wall. You carry the problems of every man yourself, he had quietly. If I do not, Orhan answered, who will? Boran leaned against the stone wall while looking toward the valley below, where torches illuminated the road. A road must be strong, he replied, but even strong men break when they forget they are human. Orhan remained silent for survival. Moment the distant horsemen appeared near the earnest note road. The guaranteed immediately raised alarm with immense armed soldiers filled the walls while archers prepared positions overlooking the gate. The approaching raiders arrived on no visible banner, making their identity impossible to determine in darkness. When they finally reached the gates, everyone recognized the symbol on their armor, Mongol, and once the atmosphere inside the fortress changed instantly. Even experienced warrior left unused. Whenever Mongol rider appeared near the frontier, their empire has crushed countless kingdoms through fear and brutality. Entire cities despaired beneath their inventions. The gate opened curiously. There three Mongols Hebron entered slowly without showing fear. Despite being surrounded by Turkish warriors, their leader stepped forward carrying a sealed message. This is for Orhan Bey, he said coldly. Orhan accepted the letter silently. Instead was a warning from a Mongol commander stationed far beyond the entered land. According to the message, growing Turkish expansion has attracted attention among powerful rulers. The Mongol demanded tribute payment and military cooperation in future campaigns, otherwise consequences would follow. Survival commander immediately argued Orhan to reject the demand publicly. Others warned that provoking the Mongol directly could destroy the frontier before Byzantine war even began. Once again, Orhan faced impossible choice. That night, he gathered his closest advisor privately inside the forest hall. Rain struck the stone wisdom while tension filled the chamber. Conversation slammed at first against the table. We cannot bow to threat, he declared, and we cannot fight every enemy at once. Another elder argued the debate continued for hours. Finally, Orhan raised his hand for silence. We will answer carefully, he had. The frontier already stand near war. We again nothing from reckless pride. Some commander disliked his response, but none challenged him openly. After the meeting ended, Orhan walked alone through the fortress corridors, deep in thought. Every direction carried dangers now. Byzantine gathering armies in the west, Mongol tested threat from the east, hidden traitors still excited somewhere within the frontier itself, and spring was approaching, the seasons of war. Several days later, scouts returned with disturbing news. Nicholas had survived by Byzantine commander had escaped before the Fortress fall completely and now travel between enemy territory, gathering efforts fought for a massive alliance against the Turk Mercury group. Rough nobles and foreign commanders were joining him steadily. More alarming still, spies reported large shipments of weapons arriving at enemy ports along the western coast. Nicholas was preparing something enormous. Orhan understood the meaning immediately. The frontier had only won a battle. The war itself had barely begun. Two strongest defense. Orhan traveled personally between allied tribes seeking military corruption. Some leaders welcomed him, warmly recognized the growing danger threatening all Turkish lands. Orhan remained hesitant. Fear controlled many haters. One tribe chef spoke honestly during a gathering near the southern valley. You ask us stand against Byzantine, Mongol, and Americans at the same time. If chef said, if we lose, our people vanish forever. Orhan looked directly toward him. If we refuse to stand together, he answered calmly, we despair one by one. The word spread through the gathering quietly. Many later realized he speak truth over the following speak. Alliance slowly gathering more warrior joined Orhan cause while supply networks expand across the frontier. Blacksmith work day and night, producing sword, armor, and warrior watching emergency shelter in case of invasion. Everywhere across the frontier, people prepare for the storm approaching them. But inside enemy land, Nicholas prepared even more carefully within a heavily guarded by Byzantine forest overlooking the sea. Commanders from different kingdoms gather around massive war maps. Mercenary captain warning foreign armors stood beside noble lords while servants paused while beneath golden challengers. Nuclears addresses them confidently. The Turks believe the victory at one forest has made the strong. He sighed, we will show them the price of arrogance. Once commander asked about Orhan directly. Nikon smiled silently. He is brave, intelligent, dangerous. His expressions darkness, which is exactly why he must die. Before his influence spread futures, the license agreed upon a terrifying strategy. Instead of attacking one settlement at a time, they would launch simultaneous assault across multiple fronts, overwhelming Turkish defense through choice and chambers. The goal was not military conquest, it was annihilation. Weeks later, as aspiring spring finally melted the last winter snow, the attack began. Villages near the western hills interrupted into flames during the night, while enemy cavalry destroyed farms and supply depots. At the same time, Mercury Cross attacks southern trade route, cutting communication between allied tribes. The frontier descended into chaos again. Messengers rode endlessly, carrying report of destruction from every direction. Inside the forest, commanders argued desperately over where to send rainful commands first. We cannot defend every village, one elder shouted. "We must," another answered angrily. Orhan listened silently. While studying the map, the enemy strategy was working exactly as intended. If Turkish forces divided completely, each group would eventually be insulated and destroyed. Then Orhan made a difficult decision. Instead of scattering barriers everywhere, he countered forces around key strategic regions, protecting the heart of the frontier. Some villages near dangerous borderland would near evictions. The decisions broke his heart but sacrificed everything trying to defend every location would destroy everyone. Boran asked immediately led eviction missions toward valuable settlement. Families packed belongings separately while soldiers in quarter refugees toward forest and mountain paths toward safer territory. Many cried while leaving their home behind. Orhan watched them silently from horseback, and endless lines of civilians move across the valley road. This was the trust, true cost of war, not glory, not victory song, but ordinary people abandoning their lives simply to survive. And other reasons. One night, while turning from an inspection near the northern defenses, Orhan Conway entered a narrow canway surrounded by steep cliffs. The silence felt wrong immediately. Too quiet, the arrows rained from above. Enemy Americans hidden among the rocks attacked from both sides simultaneously. Horses collapsed while soldiers scrambled for cover. "It is a trap," Connor shouted. The convoy interrupted into violence. Americans charged downward, wielding axes and curved blades, while archers continued firing from elevated positions. Orhan fought fiercely beside his warrior, but the enemy had prepared the ambush carefully. During the choice, one mass Asians broke through the fighting directly toward Orhan. The Asians moved with terrifying speed. Their swords collided violently. Orhan immediately realized these were no ordinary soldiers. The masked warrior fought with allied precious, targeting opening with deadly intent. The duel continued across the rocky canyon while battle raged around them. Sparks flew through the air with every strike. Finally, Orhan managed to wound the assassin's shoulders. Instead of continuing the fight, a masked warrior suddenly escaped upward through hidden mountain path. Before disappearing into darkness, the attack ended shortly afterward as Turkish reinforcement arrived through the enemy retreated. The message was clear. Nicholas no longer wanted only military victory, he wanted Orhan dead personally. After the ambush, Boran approaching carrying a broken danger recovered from a fallen emergency Mercury. This sample, Boran said carefully, belonged to alliance assistance hearts only by powerful rulers. Orhan examined the weapon silently. The war was faster than expected. A day later, another crisis emerged. A deadly illness began spreading among refugee camps near the Scout valleys. Executed families living in overcrowded shelters quickly fell sick. overwhelming handlers and supply systems. Once again, Orhan faced a battle without sword. He immediately organized medical tent, food distributions, and water purification across affected areas. He personally visited the camp despite warning about infections. The people saw their leader walking among the sick instead of hiding behind forest walls. Their loyalty depends. Future one elderly woman inside the refuge camp grabbed Orhan's hand weakly while Helder treated wounded children nearby. Your father protected his hand, she whispered. Now you protect its soul. The world stayed with Orhan long after he left. Meanwhile, enemy armies continue gathering beyond the western mountain. Scouts reported thousands of soldiers assembling beneath Byzantine banners. Mercury cavalry from distant civilians joined them. Daily massive defense weapons were transported toward Frontier Road. The final campaigning was approaching. One evening, a captured spy brought urgent information. Nicholas planned to attack a strategically important city controlling trade and communications across the frontier. If the city where Turkish alliances would collapse, Orhan immediately prepared for war. Messengers rode through the night, summoning allied tribes while soldiers gathering supplies from the largest military campaigning since Osman Bey era across the frontier. Blacksmith fire illuminated village until dawn. Warriors sharp sword beside campfires while prayers enough through tent before daybreak. Everyone understood what was coming. The next battle would shape the future on the frontier forever. Before the army marched, Orhan addressed a warrior gathering beneath hundreds of banners moving in the spring wind. Some soldiers were experienced veterans, while others were young men preparing for their first true war. Orhan looked across their faces carefully before speaking. Our enemies believe fear will divide us, he declared. They believe gold can buy loyalty. They believe armies can destroy our future. His voice grew stronger. But this frontier was not built by fear, it was built by sacrifice. The warriors listened in complete silence. We do not fight only for land, Orhan continued. We fight so our children we will not beneath chain. We fight so justice survive after we are gone. The race his sword toward the rising sun as the distantly command blood as the valley exploded was battle cries. Thousands of warriors. The rise of the serpent continued. The army moved across the western frontier like a river of iron and fire. Thousands of horses hunted across muddy roads softened by the arrival of spring rain. White banner carrying the symbol of allied tribe and waved again the darkening sky. Villagers stood beside the road silently watching the warrior pass. Some raised prayer, others cried quietly while fathers embarrassed song prepared for war. Orhan Bey rode at the front beside Boran Alps and Kannauj Alps. His expressions calm despite the growing storm surrounding the frontier. Scouts traveled continually ahead of the army. Your intestines, valley and mountain crossing. Even every hour brought new warning. Nicholas was gathering spread faster than expanded servals. Byzantine commander had united beneath his banner, but they were not alone. Mercury companions from foreign land, merchants beside them, including heavily armored soldiers, know the destroying entire settlement without Mercury. Rumors claimed even rough Turkish tribes, seeing gold, had joined the alliance secretly. The coming war would not resemble ordinary border conflict. It would decide who controlled the future of the frontier itself. As evening approached, the Turkish army established camp near a forest. River surrendered by step hills. Fire appeared across the valley while soldiers unloaded supplies and prepared defense around the perimeter. Guards double patrols immediately because enemy scouts has already been spotted nearby. Inside the command tent, Orhan studied maps spread across a wooden table, illuminated by lamp light. Mud stained the ends of the parchment, while small stone marked enemy positions reported by scouts. The coalition army is larger than expected, Quran admitted quietly. How large? Oran asked. At least 3 times our current force. Silence filled the tent. Quran ops leaned forward. Then we attack before then unite completely, and other commander disagree immediately. If we rush now, we walk direct into their number. Arguments spread quickly across the gathering. Some favored aggressive attack while others demanded defensive questions. Every man understood the danger. A single mistake could destroy everything. Osman Bey had built Oran, listening without interrupting. Then he pointed toward a narrow valley crossing marked near the northern hills. His road, he said calmly, is the key. The commander studies the map carefully. It controls the enemy supply routes from the western spots. If we cut, if their army weakens before the main battle begins, nor absolutely slowly, but the crossing it heavily, defending which is exactly why they will not expect us to strike there first. The decision was made before dawn. Secondly, Turkish unit would move through mountain path toward the northern crossing, while the main army remained hidden near the forest camp. If successful, the operation would cripple enemy logistics before the larger companion even began. That night raid covered the village. Most soldiers rested beside campfire while armor dried beneath temporary shelter, but Orhan remained awake, walking silently toward between the tents. He spoke with wounded sentries, young Varian executed scouts returning from dangerous patrols. One young soldier stopped him nervously. Maybe the warrior said quietly, "Do you believe You can truly defeat such a large army. Oran looked toward the dark hills beyond the camp. The victory does not belong to the largest army, he replied. It belongs to those who refuse to surrender their future. The young warrior lowered his head respectfully. Far away beyond the hills, enemy fires illuminated another valley beneath Byzantine banners. Nicholas stood outside his massive command tent watching Mercury unite arrive through the rain. His alliance had become stronger than even he expected. Gold attract loyalty easily during time of war. One commander's approach carrying reports from spies. The Turks remain near the eastern forest, he said. Eklon studied the map carefully. Oran will not wait behind walls, she replied. We will strike our supply routes. The commander looked surprised. Then we refuse them. Nicholas smiled slightly. No, we allow him to attack. The commander understood immediately. It was another trap. Before sunrise, Turkish units led by before a move through narrow mountain trains toward the northern crossing exactly as planned. Thick fog covered the hill while rain turned that path dangerously slippery, yet the warrior advanced without hesitation. By midday, the reached the cliff overlooking the supply road. Below, the enemy wagon moved slowly through the valley, protected by armed guard and mount cavalry. The convoy stretched across nearly half the road. Boran raised his head silently. Archers prepared positions among the rock. Then the attack began. Across rain down road without warning, while Turkish warriors charged him from hidden positions along both cliffs. Horses collapsed instantly beneath the ambush, while burning beacons blocked escape route. Enemy soldiers fought furiously, but the narrow valley trapped them completely. Within wind, Joyce consumes the crossing. Smoke rose into the sky while still enough through the mountain. At the first, victory seemed certain. Then home sounded from the western right. Additional enemy cavalry sudden appeared from hidden positions beyond the hills, surrounded Quran force from behind. The trap had closed. Fall back, Boran shouted, but retreat route were already collapsing beneath enemy pressure. The battle transformed into desperate survivals. Warriors fought hand to hand across burning weapon while arose darkness. The fog covered valley. Boran himself was thrown from his horse during the fighting, but continued waiting on foot beside his ops. Back to the main camp, scouts arrived carrying urgent news about the ambush. Orhan reacted instantly without waiting for full preparation. Full mountain his horse and led reinforcement toward the northern crossing at full speed. The ride through the mountain became a race against that. By the time Orhan reached the valley, Boran force was nearly surrounded completely. Enemy cavalry pushed toward from both directions while miraculously archers controlled the cliff above. Oran did not hesitate. He set his sword and charged directly into the battle. The arrival of Turkish reinforcements shattered enemy momentum temporarily. Oran fought through the center of the valley like a storm, cutting through armored soldiers while shouting commands above the joys. Oran saw him through the smoke and blood. For the frontier, Oran roared. The surviving warrior rallied immediately. The battle instant field across the valley floor, mud mixed with blood beneath the horses, while shattered wagon burned against the rain. Enemy Americans attempt to regroup around their commander, but Orhan assault drove them backward step by step. Then Nicholas himself appeared on the western right, overlooking the battlefield. Even from a distance, Orhan recognized himself instantly. Their eyes may met brief across the valley. Nicholas watched calmly while the battle continued below. He had not come merely for victory. He had come to study Oran personally for near hour. The fighting continued without pause. Finally, as Turkish reinforcement gained momentum, enemy commanders ordered retreats toward the western hills, the valley belonging to Oran. But the coast was dry. Dozens of warriors lay dead beside the destroyed convoy. Others screamed in pain while Hellas rushed through the battlefield desperately trying to save the wounded. Boran sat against as Boran. Wagon holding a bleeding victim crossed the shoulder. Orhan approaching him immediately. You should rest, Orhan, and Boran laughed weakly. Despite the pain, you arrived before death did. Orhan looked across the battlefield silently. The victory felt hollow because Nicholas had achieved something important today. He had proven the enemy alliance could match Turkey's strategy and near destroy allied forces through deceptions alone. That night, funeral prayers echoed the mountain valley while rain continued falling over roar or falling warrior wrapped in cloth. The soldiers stood silently holding torches as names as the head were spoken. One by one, Orhan personally carried survival parties toward the burial ground. No ruler who truly understood war celebrated death easily. Later, after the funeral ended, Orhan sat alone beside the dying fire outside camp. Accustions weighed heavily across his race. While distant thunder moved through the mountain, his mother's word returned to him again. A ruler role forgets compassions become on different than the enemies he fight. For the first time in a many months, Orhan questioned whether endless war could try build lasting peace. But for the first time in many months, Oran questioned where endless war could truly build lasting peace, but before dawn arrived and other messengers entered camp carrying even darkness news. Enemy forces had begun moving toward the city of and it for the frontier itself would begin to collapse. The rise of the crescent's part continued. The news about spread through the camp before sunrise. Soldiers whispered beside the fires while commander gathering urgently inside the rain-war tent. Everyone understood the importance of the city was not simply another fortress standing on the frontier. It controlled the road connecting western trade route to the inner valleys. Whoever ruled the city controlled movement across nearby the entire region. If Nicholas captured it, allied tribe would become insulated from one another. Orhan stood beside the map table silently while rainwater dripped from the entrance of the tent. Executives cow continue arriving enter hall bringing darker report. Enemy cavalry had already been seen near village surrounding Mercury. The forces were constructing temporary camp across the western hills. Nichols was preparing for scenes warfare. Now look toward Oran carefully. We will have time to reach the city before the enemy fully surrenders it. Barely Boran answered grimly and other commanders spoke nervously. If we move the entire army now, we leave the northern road exposed and it falls. Boran repeated. The north will not matter anymore. The tent full silent again. Oran started at the map of survival. Moment before making his decisions, we marched immediately. No one argued. Preparing began within minutes. Horns up enough across the valley while soldiers dismantled tent and loaded supplies onto wagons or were prepared quickly. Despite executions from previous battles, rain continued to fall as the army moved westward through muddy roads beneath dark skies. The march toward Unitiers became a race against time. Militias along the road wrapped around that enemy scouts already controlled nearby hills. Several abandoned settlements show signs of secret recent red burned home and empty market palace stood silently beside the road, like reminder of what failure would bring. On the third evening, Oran as his commander finally reached the outer hills overlooking Yeshirs. The sight before them, valleys before towers and captures where begins towers and captures we begin assembled near the outer deafening smoke. A continuous campfire covered the horizons beneath dark from courts Nicholas had arrived first inside Genesius. The remaining defenders still held the walls, but the city was already under Parthia's Saints' refuge, crowded the gates desperately, while merchants attempted to flee with wagons full of belongings, nor obstructing the enemy positions carefully. Their number are even larger now. Orhan needed silently. This would not be a quick battle. Nicholas has committed everything. That night, Orhan secretly entered Genesius through a hidden tunnels, known only to local commander. Boran accompanied him along with several trusted warriors carrying supplies and messages. The atmosphere inside the city felt instant. Executed civilians gathered water from guarded well, while black mist worked through the night repairing remained. Armored children slept inside mosque and storage hall converted into shelter. Soldiers patrolled the wall despite visible fatigue. The city commander greeted Orhan immediately inside the fortress halls. Maybe said respectfully, "We forces you will do not arrive in time." "How strong are the defense?" Orhan asked. The commander hesitated before answering. "Strong enough for a sign and supplies, perhaps 3 weeks in rations." Carefully the answers troubled Orhan. Nicholas likely possessed enough rescue to maintain the sign for longer than that. Inside the war chamber, Orhan gathering local commander and studies the city loyalties carefully. Genesius' wall remained strong, but several outer towers had suffered damage during previous conflict. Rust still enemy signs engines continue growing in number daily. One commander spoke quietly. "There is another danger." Orhan looked toward him. "Spies." The commander continued carefully. "Survivors." "Please continue." Warehouses were burned from inside the city before the began. "Someone is helping the enemy." Orhan closed his eyes briefly. Even here, betrayal excited for the next several days. Orhan focused on strengthening both the defenses and morals inside Lycius. He personally installed the walls, trained younger soldiers, and recognized ration system to prevent panic among civilians. The people gained hope simply by seeing him present. Rumors spread quickly through the street. Orhan Bey has come. The world alone calmed. Fear crossed the city. Meanwhile, the outsider walked. Nicholas prepared patiently, unlike reckless commanders seeking immediate assault. Her preferred pressure every day. His forces tightening control around the city while Science weapon moved closer to attack positions. When evening, Nicholas stood beside a hill overlooking glaciers with several children nearby. He entered the city exactly as expected. One commander said. Nicholas smiled. "Fairly good." You wanted him trapped inside. Nicholas nodded a warrior things with his sword. A ruler thing responsibility. Orhan could never abandon the city. The general studied the wall below carefully, and now Nicholas looked toward the growing scene camps. Now we break his. Slowly the first assault began 2 days later. Before dawn, enemy catapults launched during stones toward the outer wall, while horse thundered across the valley. Thunders of soldiers advanced beneath shield, carrying litter and signs hooked toward the defense. Archers on the wall respond instantly. Aroused darkened the sky, walls boiling oil poured downward against deckers, screamed the ladders. The sound of steel screams and fire consumes the battlefield. Oran fought directly on the walls beside the warriors. Everywhere he moved, morals threatening. Every soldier managed to breach one outer gate briefly before Boran Abs led a contract facing them backward into the killing zone between the wall. The battle continued until sunset. By nightfall, the defenders still held initiators, but the coast was served. Dozens of soldiers has fallen while part of the outer wall burned from repeated catapult strike. Hitters walked through the night, treating wounds. Warrior inside overcrowded halls filled with blood and smoke. Oran visited every secret section personally despite executions. One wounded young soldier grabbed him arm weakly. Maybe we whispered painfully, did we stop them? Orhan nodded for today. The soldier smiled faintly before losing consciousness. That night, while rain executions fall along the walls, Orhan gathering to commands once again. We cannot survive endless assaults like this. One elders admitted, and other commanders added. The people are already afraid. Orhan remained calm despite the pressure crushing the room. Then we changed the battle. The commander looked toward him carefully. Orhan pointed toward the western hills outside the city. The enemy sign weapons are their greatest strength. Destroy them and we weaken both their attack and moral. Boran Abs understood immediately. A night raid Oran needed. The plan was dangerous beyond reason. Selected warriors would secretly lead the city through underground tunnel before midnight, infiltrate enemy camp, destroy the signs enemy and return before dawn. If discovered, escape would become nearly impossible, yet everyone knows they had no other choice. Near midnight, Orhan personally led the missions. Rain and darkness concealed their movement, and a small group emerged, silence from hidden tunnels beyond the city walls. Enemy camp stretched across the valley, illuminated by hundreds of fires, while guards patrolled before row of tents. The Turkish warrior moved like shadow. They eliminated insulated sentries quietly before reaching the sign equipment near the western ridge. Large catapults toward above supply Wagons stacked with oil and ammunition. Oran gave the signal within seconds. Flame erupted across the enemy camp. Burning oil exploded while sign to towers fought fire instantly. Joy spread among the sleeping soldiers. Our army enough through the valley. The Turks attacked from multiple directions simultaneously. Enemy commander rushed desperately trying to organize defense, but confusion consumes the camp completely. Horses broke free from burning stable while explosions illuminated the rain-soaked battlefield. Orhan fought through the choice, searching for nucleus personally. Instead, he encountered the same masked Russians from the Cannoin ambush week earlier. The warrior urgent smoke carrying witchcraft bladder reflecting firelight. Their duel began immediately. The Asians attacked with terrifying speed, while flame consumes nearby sign toners. Every strike target deadly. Every strike target deadly, opening with calculated precious. Orhan blocked repeatedly while attempting counterattack for survival. In moment, neither warrior gained advantage. Then the assassin spoke from the first time. For you will man carrying a empire on his shoulders. The voice sounded unfamiliar beneath the mask. Orhan attacked harder. The Asians retreated toward burning tents before sudden vanish began into the choice exactly as before. Boran Bey shouted from nearby, Maybe enemy reinforcement. The missions had success, but the camp were recognizing rapidly now. Orhan ordinary immediate retreat toward the city tunnel while explosions continue behind them. By dawn, most signs had been destroyed. The victory transformed morale inside Yeshirs completely. Civilians cheered from the walls while soldiers celebrated surviving another impossible night. But Nicholas, watching the turning ruins of his camp silently for the western rise, his expressions remained calm because despite the closest the sign was far from over. The art of Ottoman warfare and military strategy. The battles that Osman Bey fought were not just about having soldiers or stronger weapons. They are about understanding how to use the land, how to understand your enemy, and how to make the best decisions under pressure. Ottoman warfare was an art form. It combined ancient Turkish traditions with new strategies that Osman and his commanders learned through experience. Thus, military knowledge was passed down from generation to generation, and it became one of the reasons why the Ottoman Empire was so successful for so many centuries. When we look at how Osman army fought, we see a very difficult style from the Byzantine army. The Byzantine soldiers wore heavy armor. They had large shields. They used long spears. They fought in organized formation. This style of fighting was good for protecting cities and holding ground, but it was slow. The soldiers in heavy armors could not move quickly. They could not change direction suddenly. They had to fight it open field where that was room for the large formations. Usman's soldiers, on the other hand, wore lighter armor. They rode horses that were fast and strong. They carried swords, bow, and spears that were lighter than Byzantine weapons. This made them very fast. They could move quickly across the mountain and valley. They could attack suddenly and then appear before the enemy could respond. This hit and run style of fighting was very effective against a heavy, slow moving enemy like the Byzantine. One of the most important weapons in Ottoman warfare was the bow and arrow. Turkish warriors had been using bows for thousands of years. They were experts at shooting arrows from horseback, and archers on fast horse could shoot arrows at the enemy while moving. The enemy soldiers, especially those in heavy armor, could not move quickly enough to would balance bounce of the heavy armor, but they would slow the soldiers down and wear them out. This was a smart way to defeat an army that had better armor and better weapons in direct combat. The cavalry was the heart of Ottoman's military power. A cavalry charge could break apart enemy formations. A group of skilled riders on fast horses moving together at one unit could hit the enemy like a hammer. The enemy would scatter and run. Once the enemy formation was broken, the individual soldiers could be defeated. This is why the Ottomans spent so much time training their cavalry. This is why Osman chose his cavalry commanders very carefully. The quality of the cavalry was often the difference between victory and defeat. The terrain of the region was very important to Ottoman military strategy. The lands around south and the direction of Bursa was filled with mountain and valley. Heavy armored Byzantine soldiers could not move easily through this terrain, but Ottoman soldiers on horses could move through their areas without much difficulty. Osman and his commander used this advantage. They would fight the Byzantines in the mountain where the Ottomans were stronger. They would avoid fighting in flat open field where the Byzantine heavy armor and organized formations would be more effective. And other important elements of Ottoman strategy was the use of scouts and spies. Before attacking a city or fighting a battle, Osman should send scouts to gather information. They needed to know how many soldiers were in the city. They needed to know how much food and water the city had. They needed to know where the weak point in the city defenses were. They needed to know what the enemy commanders was thinking. With good information, Osman could make smart decisions. Without good information, and decision would be gamble. The guises of cities were often the most important battles. When Osman wanted to capture a city, he could not just attack the walls directly, they would be too costly. Instead, he would surround the city and cut off all supplies. He would unite the people inside the city were hungry and tired. Sometimes this looks weeks or even months, but eventually the people inside would have to surrender because they had no other choice. This close sign method was less exciting than dramatic battles, but it was often much more effective. During a sign, the attackers would use many different methods to try to break into the city. They might try to break down the gates with a battering ram. They might try to break down the gates with a battering ram. They might try to climb the walls using ladders. They might try to dig under the walls to make them collapse. They might use fire to burn the gates. They might use arrows to kill the soldiers defending the walls. Each method required different skills and different equipments. A good commander would use all these methods in combination to eventually break into the city. The fortifications that the Ottomans built and captured were very important to their strategy. A well-built fortress could be defended by a small number of soldiers against a much larger force. This is why both the Byzantine and the Ottomans spent so much time and money building and maintaining fortress. A fortress was like a head on a chessboard. It controlled the territory around it. By capturing fortress, Osman could control larger and larger areas of land. The organizations of the Ottoman army was very important in many armies of that time. Soldiers were just a chaotic mass of fighters, but in the Ottoman army, soldiers were organized into units. Each unit had a commander. The commanders reported to higher ranking officers. This chain of command made it possible for larger number of soldiers to work together in a coordinated way. Without this organization of soldiers to work together in a coordinated way, without these organizations, even a large army would be defeated by a small but better organized army. The training of Ottomans also soldiers was intense. Our soldiers needed to learn how to ride our horses skillfully. Our soldiers needed to learn how to use his weapon effectively. Our soldiers needed to learn how to follow orders and work as part of a unit. Our soldiers needed to learn how to stay calm in battle. This training took months or even years. Only soldiers who completed this training were allowed to fight in major battles. This is one reason of Osman soldiers were often more effective than Byzantine soldiers. Even when the Ottomans were outnumbered, the morale of soldiers was also very important. Soldiers was believed in their cause, fought harder and longer than soldiers who were just fighting for money. Osman understood this. He made sure his soldiers understood that they were fighting for Islam, for their families, and for their future. He shared the reward of victory with his soldiers. He honored soldiers who died in battle. He took care of the families of soldiers who were killed. This created loyalty. Soldiers would fight harder for a leader they trusted and respected. The leadership between the commanders and the soldiers was circular. A great commander was not just someone who was brave. A great commander was someone who understood his soldiers. He knows their strength and their weakness. He knows that they were capable of that. He cannot ask them to think that was impossible. He did not ask them to accept defeat when victory was possible. The best commanders like Turgut Alps and Aska Koka had this understanding of their soldiers. The use of physiological in welfare was also important. Sometimes our commanders could win